Ladies and gentlemen, good morning. I'm Apostolos Mangiriadis, and I'm welcoming you here at the Delphi Economic Forum, and I welcome Paul Dance to Delphi. Paul, thank you very much for joining us.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Let me say a few words about Paul Dance. He's the former Chief of Staff at the U.S. Office of Personnel Management and served as the Director of the 2025 Presidential Transition Project. It was an initiative aimed at preparing a framework for a potential future Republican administration. Paul has a deep knowledge and experience in federal personnel and governance planning, so we have a lot to talk. Paul, let me first ask you a current affairs question on Trump's decision to impose tariffs to nearly everyone in the world. On Wednesday, after the market synced, he freezed tariffs for 90 days to give room to negotiations. So I'm asking for your take. What do you see, whether you see a resolution in the following days?
Well, this was one of the core promises that President Trump ran on. He's been talking about this, to be fair, for the last 40 years. You know, there's a systematic imbalance in the United States, and it's gotten to the level where it's a strategic danger for us. We learned that during COVID. So it doesn't surprise me at all that President Trump moved out on this immediately, and I think it's been a great success, quite honestly. What we've seen here is, you know, what the White House was saying, the art of the deal unfolding. More than $6 trillion have been committed to the United States economy from the November election forward. As well, 75 countries came forward to rebalance the trade between those countries. So I think what's happening here is a big step forward, and I think this is kind of part of the plan.
There's a widespread belief that Trump buckled because of the effect his announcement had on government bonds. What's your take on that?
Not buckling at all. No, this is step two. He made clear, and Secretary Bessent did too, they know that there's going to be a short-term kind of distortion, but they're looking long-term. This is a balance that has to be done not only for the good of the United States, but really the good of the entire free world. Right now, what now the world really appreciates is the fundamental imbalances with China. This is a fundamental error that dates back to the admission into the WTO. It's never been fair, and we as Americans have suffered the deindustrialization, and same now with Western Europe. So I don't think it's buckling. I think that this has been planned, and the way they're going about it, this 90 days, believe it, this is to get the best deals done. This is the time countries should be going to the United States and really coming forward with not just a trade package, but all these other strategic offerings in terms of security, other exchanges with the United States, and really what they can do in the rest of the world as well that will help the United States and freedom overall. So look, he's laid out the top line where it went. They cut the thing in half at first. He said, I'm going to do this at 50%. Believe me, if 90 days from now, if you haven't struck a deal, I think you're going to face a lot tougher consequences.
Let's hope we get a deal. What was the primary mission of the 2025 Presidential Transition Project, and how did it differ from previous transition efforts?
The seminal proposition was we need to be ready to govern if a conservative president wins. You know, it's been an honor to come here to Delphi, and I remarked on the cats and the dogs lying, you know, in the sidewalk and sleeping in the sun. That's a little bit how the conservatives are in the United States. We're a little bit like cats, kind of going in different directions. So one of the things centrally was to organize ourselves, to kind of lead in a way that would be beneficial. We have a lot that unites us, but we're typically always infighting. So the idea was to take what those of us who worked in the Trump term one had accomplished, our goals that we wanted to accomplish that were flustered, and memorialize them. But more than that, to tell the future president that personnel is policy, that you cannot deliver on these promises you make to the American people without ensuring that the people below you are fully aligned with your mission. So it's not a question of getting people who maybe know their way around Washington. It's people who believe in the mission to start with. The rest, you can figure your way around Washington. And the problem with the Washington dwellers is they're part of an ecosystem there. that they're looking for long-term survival, irrespective of who's president. So I think he completely internalized that, and he has a very aligned complement of people at the top in his cabinet. And what we've seen is as he would say, a first 100 days like the world's never seen before.
We hear from government officials about the right people who can serve in the Trump administration. Who are the right people, and what characteristics do they have?
Well, number one, like I said, is alignment, that they have to be America first. This is what we've done here in the last 100 years is a deviation from our constitutional founding. In the U.S., we're going to have our 250th birthday next year, and we are a constitutional republic that was formed with many of the ideals that were first incarnated here in ancient Greece. And to that extent, the last 100 years with the growth of a progressive government and a bureaucratic state has gotten away from that. We are a government of, by, and for the people, but now there's been this unelected bureaucracy that makes all the decisions. So the person he picks needs to appreciate that, needs to know that this is a thankless job in a sense. They're reformers, and they have to be willing to take the heat. I think, too, they have to be outsiders. They can't be part of this Washington swamp, this ecosystem. And, we've always talked about what it would be like to have a businessman or woman as president of the United States, and we have that now. But a number of the people have this expertise from other walks of life, and they're bringing it to bear on the federal government. And that's the problem. This has been a long time coming. It's a constitutional house cleaning in a way on the eve of this 250th birthday, so we can keep this republic for another 250.
You refer to Trump's being a business person. What is it like for him to take, various decisions, running a country like running a business? Can you explain that?
Well, you see the pace that he goes at. I think this is a man whose stamina is pretty much unmatched. 3 hours of sleep, but he is one thing to the next. He doesn't suffer silence well, and he wants to move and do as much as possible in the time. I think he's governing with an urgency that we haven't seen before. He doesn't have the patrician kind of laissez-faire attitude. So I think the willingness to be activist and engage is a core essence of Trump. And I think, action, action, action is what the phrase is, and that's happening.
Project 2025 didn't call for the elimination of U.S. aid, which is what Marco Rubio is actually doing. Why didn't the government back the initial plan to strengthen U.S. AID?
Well, Project 2025 and what Trump's plan, they're kind of separate things, but they do have a lot of similarities. Somebody would say maybe they're identical twins, not quite, maybe more correctly, brothers from a different mother. As we might say in the U.S. The idea, though, is what we had put forth in Project 2025 was renegade agencies, and USAID it was part of this global bureaucracy that was really unanswerable to the president. And it had kind of, in the first Trump term, been almost at loggerheads with the foreign policy directives. Under our Constitution, that's the clear prerogative of the president to set the foreign policy as commander-in-chief, and to have an agency under the executive branch that was acting contrary to his direction was a problem. So I think we alerted them to the problem, and the reality is when they got in there and kind of opened up the body and saw how bad off it was, many of these functions are going to be folded back into the State Department, as I understand. But the mission is going to be much more aligned with foreign policy and answerable to the president.
And just to follow up on this, how did your team prepare for managing the federal bureaucracy, especially the so-called deep state, which has become a contentious issue in conservative circles?
Well, it's maybe a little tough for the outsiders. We're limited with time, but our federal government is about 2.2 million federal workers. There's 350 million Americans. When the president gets in, we have three branches of government, and the president's the head of the executive branch. All the executive power under our Constitution, which is Article 2, Section 1, Clause 1, is vested in a president of the United States. From him and one day her, those powers flow down to all the agencies. So there's really no such thing as an independent agency. That was a construct that came up in this last 100 years and was really got its gears in place through Watergate and the like. The idea is the president is the commander-in-chief, he is the chief legal officer, and he is the chief executive of the government. So think about a soccer team, or if you guys call it football, would you want to have a player or two whose job it is to make a turnover or pass, try to score on our own net? No, you don't. You want an aligned group. So that's really the proposition here, that if the president's going to be able to execute his powers, he needs to be able to have hiring and firing. So is that fundamental proposition, when the civil service was stood up in 1883, 10% of the jobs were given this career protection. Fast forward to today, 99.7% of the jobs have the career protection. So the president comes in as the chief executive officer, and he can't hire and fire essentially the staff. How do you get them to start working the way? And the problem for conservatives is that much of this staff is drawn from Washington. There's a cosmopolitan elite, like most major areas. 95% of the population in DC metro area vote for the Democrats. So you're already supervising a group in the main who don't agree with you ideologically, but you need to get them to move out on the agenda that the American people just voted for. So that's what democracy is. Our project was never a threat to democracy, it was a threat to bureaucracy. And we are basically renewing democracy by putting that power of the president back in charge of the agencies, and he gets his power every 4 years from the people.
Well, let me get our discussion for the last couple of minutes to where we started. If tariffs are imposed, it will create inflation, as most of the economists say, and that will hit the electoral base of Donald Trump. Don't you see that as a political problem for the president?
It's imperative that we reestablish some core strategic industries in the U.S. We learned that through COVID, and now you see even our armament is so ineffectual right now that we hardly have the ability to replace Stinger missiles or build various material.
You do this in the course of a presidential term, 4 years.
It has to start some point, and that's what this is. This is not just a message to the rest of the world. This is a message for the existing United States companies, stay here. And then two, it's come in, and for foreign investors, come into the United States. This is going to be a very friendly market. We're going to open up our markets to you fully, and this is the place where you want to be doing business. But three, I think that the tariffs are going to equilibrate, that this is the time to make a deal like none other. And, if there is, ultimately, he's kind of set the base of 10%. But, if you can get to a free trade agreement, this is ultimately a negotiation. But look, this has happened over 30 years. We've had 90,000 companies, factories close, and we realize that there's a necessity to rebuild these jobs. This is how the American people are going to get back on their feet.
Final question, Paul. Are you thinking of joining the Trump administration at some point?
Well, it'd be an honor to. I'm anytime they need, they can call me. But I'm happy to help the president on the outside. So much of this was we wanted the citizen to come. The notion of kind of returning to your farm, the Cincinnatus ideal, that you come and serve in the United States government and then go back to your private life. So I've had the honor to serve before, and what Project 2025 really did was an invitation for those to come do it. And what I think you see is that paying off with Elon Musk, with a lot of great technical people who have put aside their business lives and said, this is my duty and my time to come to Washington. So it's very empowering and a good sign, I think, that people are willing to do that.
Paul, thank you very much for sharing your thoughts, and I hope you enjoy your time in Delphi.
My pleasure.
Thank you. Thank you.